First of all, before we proceed, I would like to encourage us to fill the seats that are at the front. They're not reserved for anyone except ourselves. So feel free to come and sit at the front. Great. Thank you so much for being such a compliant audience and for being understanding with the delay. My name is Mchemwa. I am from Almasi Collaborative Arts, which is a Zimbabwean American dramatic arts organization which seeks to contribute towards the professionalization of the Zimbabwean dramatic arts industry. So part of the work that we do includes having stage readings, doing productions, and also having artist talks where we have artists who participate in our cultural exchange program, where we have artists from America coming to Zimbabwe, as well as artists from Zimbabwe going to America to collaborate with artistic institutions, as well as collaborating with artists as well. So in this case, we have Patrick Miller, who's a playwright, writer, and co-founder of the Writers Cafe, who went to Ojai Playwrights Conference in California, where he participated in their Playwrights Conference for this year in their Writers Residency Program. So what we're here for today is to talk to Patrick about his experiences as a playwright, as well as his experience participating in the Ojai Playwrights Conference, where he was sharing the politics of his work in a space that is away from home, because most of the time when we're sharing our work, if we're sharing it locally, it's easier for people to get the context. But once we are selling it, or once we're sharing it to other people who don't necessarily know anything about our culture, or about our politics, or economics, or about our country, sometimes it can be a bit of a negotiation that needs to take place. So we're here to find out from Patrick what that experience was like and how did he navigate that experience as well. So the first question I would like to ask Patrick is, when did you start calling yourself a playwright and why?
Okay. Hi everyone. As for when I started calling myself a playwright, I think it was after my first, well, it's not my first play that was produced, but the first professionally, in quotation marks, produced play of mine when you were on stage. That's when I thought, okay, might as well start calling myself this, because I have the evidence to say, okay, I'm a playwright, where's the evidence? There's my play, Google it, you can find it. So as for why, but I couldn't think of anything better than to say I'm a playwright, because I was also surrounded by other people like, oh, I'm a dancer, and oh, I'm an actor, blah, 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 but hardly anyone, doing the whole playwright. I was like, okay, let me dive into this whole writing thing and see where it will take me. And then I found that, okay, I actually think, I might be good at it, who knows, but it's up for debate how good I am at it, but it's been a journey, even though there are certain times where I don't feel like I deserve to be called a playwright, because I'm a very lazy writer, I'm a very lazy writer, so I know enough writers and playwrights, every single day they're writing something, they're editing something, but for me, when I don't feel like writing, I won't write anything, and that's usually quite a lot of the times, and then when inspiration hits me, I'm spending, 2 days not sleeping, writing, because the story it wants to be written. I usually wait for the story to come to me, and then I write, so I feel like I'm a fraud sometimes, but
But it's another experience of many an artist that sometimes you never feel like the times when you don't feel like you really deserve to call yourself, to give yourself that label, because sometimes you ask yourself, okay, so what is a playwright? Does that mean that I'm writing plays 24/7, like every day I'm writing plays or talking plays? Or does that mean that maybe 3/4 of my time I am consistently working on the craft of writing a play,
Yes.
in a sense. Yeah.
There's also that, and also I think because some others will then also ask, show me the money, are you being paid for that thing that you're calling yourself? If you're not being paid for it, then why should you call yourself that? So there's always that question that you didn't have to answer. So yeah.
So are you being paid?
Am I being paid? Oh,
If you don't mind my asking, so I'm not asking for your financial statements, but are you getting some sort of living off your playwriting?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes and no.
Okay. All right. I think for now I'll leave that question. Otherwise, we might be here for some time.
Yeah.
Because a lot of artists don't like talking about the money, isn't it? Artists enjoy talking about their work, about their process. When it comes to the money, it's like.
I think that's true.
Okay. All right. So you also talked about the idea that you started calling yourself a playwright when you got your first play produced professionally. Can you tell us a bit more about what was the journey that you went through in order to get your play produced professionally?
Well, I was part of the Hyper Direct program, the 2010 one first. So I saw an article in the paper, and it was only 2 weeks before the deadline, and I was like, oh well, I've got something that I was already working on, I might as well just do it. So I dived into it, started writing it, and funny enough, it was first a music, first as a musical, but then they accepted it, and then when we then got into the workshop processes of actually creating the whole thing, a lot of things were chucked out, and I started diving into the meat and bones of the story to say, okay, what exactly is my story? What am I trying to say? And in that's when I then started crafting the story, then started coming out. And at least I had people that I was working with, the actors, the directors, the dramaturg, and the writing instructors. So that made it a bit easy because it was also, a learning process for me. I started learning how to do certain things. But since I was still pretty much new to the whole thing, there's a lot of stuff that I didn't know in terms of how it actually works, how the industry works, what to say, what not to say, who to work with, who not to work with, that kind of thing. So it was fun, even though there were some instances that were not so fun dealing with it, because...
What were those instances? Would you care to share with us what those instances were?
Well, I guess I won't be the first, and I don't think I'll be the last to say it's not always easy for a writer and a director to kind of see eye to eye what feels like being a mistake. Because, as the person writing it, I have an idea of okay, what I want to see. And then the director is the person who is, interpreting the work, who is casting the vision, who is kind of building that whole thing. He's got his own ways of seeing things. So now, for me, that was my first instances of having those clashes of that is not what I wrote for. What is this?
But then that was also quite a unique platform, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's not just about getting your play produced for the stage, but it was also a development process for your play as well. So they combined two things where in the process your play is being further developed, but at the same time you're also preparing for an actual performance of the play. So that was quite a uniquely interesting.
It was interesting, and it then also pushed me to say okay, let me properly now dive into the whole formal school and all that. And it was okay, let me go and learn some of these things. So after that play, that's when I really started,
which you did here.
Which I did here, Twiddle, which I did here. So.
Wow, that's wonderful. You talked about the process, the first time of getting your play produced professionally. As a playwright, I know you might not like to be asked this question, but I'll ask it anyway.
Okay.
What was the darkest moment for you as a playwright?
The darkest moment? Okay, for me, I guess always different. But so there's a lot of dark moments, but one of the most significant things was like between 2012 and 2013. So in 2012, I had my second play professionally produced. It was called I Have Sinned, and it was revolving around a certain character that had committed suicide. So when I was writing that play, I went into a whole lot of things. Studying quite a lot about suicide, the science, all of that, all the things that you want. I thought were necessary for me to kind of really understand what it is that I'm creating and all that stuff, So this was like 2012 and all that, and the play happened, it was great. And then, beginning of 2013, a very good friend of mine then did actually commit suicide. And it's something that I didn't see coming. So, for me, so it marked a turning point in my writing, because I literally stopped writing for about 3 years. I couldn't write. Because I was like, okay, as an artist, we pride ourselves on being empathetic, being able to see things that, ordinary people are not seeing. And having done a play that was dealing with suicide, yet my friend was going through things that I didn't see until it then, really happened to me. So I couldn't bring myself to open myself up again as a writer, to dive in and start writing stuff. So it only took me until sometime in 2016. So between 2013 and 2016, I didn't write anything because I couldn't do it. So I think for me, that time was kind of like a dark days in a way. There was no progress in terms of my writing. I wasn't even thinking about writing. I was focused on so many other things besides writing. So yeah, for me I guess that could be considered one of my moments.
Are you one of those playwrights who believe in writing or art as a form of therapy and as a form of actually dealing with issues or grief? And how did that affect that moment in your life?
Well, when I started writing again, it was now more as a means of therapy. Not to say that I'm writing something that I want people to see or people to read, but I was now diving into that whole idea of writing as therapy. So from that's when I then had the idea of starting the Writers Cafe, to kind of make it also part of what it is that I'll be doing with the writers at the Writers Cafe, where we kind of dive into our own issues as writers, like an AA meeting for writers, where we come together and we just go into those dark things and deal with it through our writing, to kind of get those things out of the way, so that at least you don't, hopefully I don't have to then go through something as intense as those 3 years where I had such a massive, writer's block, and I couldn't get over it. So now I'm kind of just now using writing as therapy, and even some of the works that I'm now trying to attempt to write, to also use them as my own form of therapy. So even The Prophet was my own form of therapy. All the nonsense that was in it was also my own way of dealing with some of those things and how I relate to them, how I feel about them, that kind of thing. So,
Speaking about The Prophet, that's the play that you developed at the Almasi African Playwrights Conference this year, and it's the one that you also then used to get selected for the writers' residence in Ohio. And how did that come about? How was the process from submitting it to Almasi to being further developed at the African Playwrights Conference, and then being participating at the Ohio Playwrights Conference in California?
Okay, well, with The Prophet, it was quite a long journey, because that was the play that I started writing when I then got over the writer's block. So I started writing it, I think it was April or something like that of 2016. So that's when that journey began of The Prophet, and it went through a couple of readings before I eventually got to the draft that I submitted to the Almasi African Playwrights Conference. Because the first reading of The Prophet happened when I was in Manhattan, Kansas, during the Mandela Washington Fellowship. I had a reading of it, so it was kind of fun to see, in terms of how the people there responded to it, because I was using a cast of, people from other African countries, that are very different. from Zim. So the whole idea of them now trying to figure out the context of my work, and me also trying to figure out what the hell is it that I'm writing, you know. And then the next reading of it happened in Nairobi, Kenya. So now that was fun, you know, to kind of also get to have a feel of that, and then, you know, started doing changes to the play until I then submitted it for Almasi Players Conference, and then got into those, you know, 10 days of literature classes, you know, sleepless nights trying to rewrite the thing, trying to make it better, clearer, sharper, you know. So that was intense. For me, that was kind of, yeah, that process. I think, you know, even though it was an important process, you know, and I think it's something that, you know, every playwright, writer should go through, you know, that whole having, you know, your stuff going through dramaturgical work, you know, having people ask those questions that you don't want them to ask you, you know, in terms of like, okay, this is not making sense, what are you trying to say? So even though there are certain moments where you pulled out my hair during the conference, but I think it made it so much better, you know, considering how it was 10 days, you know, later, you know, when it was then read for the audience and how they responded to it, you know, both the positive and not so positive reactions that the audience had to the play.
I remember when you were in your own space as a playwright during the conference, you posted a note that said, "Please, no more notes. I beg you.
Yeah.
I am done."
Yeah.
I think, how did that come about?
Because, you know, with that process there, yes, because, you know, you're getting all these notes from the director, from the actors, from the writing instructor, from the dramaturg. So these are a whole lot of people who are just whispering in your ears so many things, and I am human. I get to a point where I'm like, you know, I can't deal with this, you know, because some of the questions I was like, okay, I'm answering your questions in this draft that I'm working on, so could you shut up and let me get to it, and then you read it, and then we then get to that. So that then I didn't want to say it out loud. So I was like, you know, let me put a note to say, okay, today I don't want any notes, you know, we'll deal with that when I finish this draft that I'm working on, and then we can get to it. So yeah, you know, it's just being.
But at the same time, it must be fun having all those people having thoughts and questions about your work, where people are actually generous enough to actually contribute towards the development of your work.
Yeah. You know, I felt special for 10 days, you know, having all these people, you know, diving into my work, you know, just wanting to know what it is that's going on inside my head, because it's not something that happens every day, where you have people who are really genuinely interested to know the process, to know what it is that is going on in your mind, that is going on the paper, and for you to actually even experiment with certain things, to say, okay, can we try this out? Can we try this out? Because when you're writing by yourself, you're just simply, it's you and your computer. Your computer does whatever it is that you're telling it. You know, it won't ask you.
Sometimes it autocorrects you.
Yes, it does that, and it won't ask you, you know, some of those things, or even tell you that, you know, what you have in your mind is not exactly what it is that's on paper. And for me, that's one of the things that I really appreciated, where, you know, we're having those discussions of people getting what it is that I'm trying to say, but then pointing out to say, like, okay, we get what you're saying, but that's not in the play. Can you put it in the play now? You know, we get what you're saying, but put it on paper so that whoever's going to access later on will get it. You know, so yeah.
Great. So speaking of the writer in residence that you did at the All High Players Conference, would you like to take us through that process and perhaps share something from that process as well?
Okay, so, well, the nice thing about that program was that I had, you know, space to myself where I could really explore the things that I wanted to explore as a writer without having the stress of creating a new draft every single day. Like the other playwrights were not in the writer's residence program. Every single day they had to have a new draft of their plays. And I didn't have to go through that. All I just needed to do was to write or not to write. You know, to go and find individuals and just simply, you know, get stuff downloaded, into my system and just, expand myself, and try out things that I hadn't given myself, the chance to try. Because I hate monologues with a passion, because I feel like I can't write them well, so that's why I hate them. That's my excuse. When people ask me, why don't you do monologues? Because I hate them. But that hate is also coming from the whole idea of like, oh, I'm not that good at them. So for me, that was one of the challenges that I decided to do. Like I was like, okay, let me try out this thing that I've been afforded to do, to write monologues and actually to perform them. Doing that whole one-man show. Because I'm like, I don't think my life is that exciting for me to spend an hour, with individuals acting out things from my life. But then at least I had people with me who were able to kind of, minds and stuff from me, even though some very uncomfortable things, to kind of bring it out so that I didn't get into to those monologues that I didn't want to do. And also trying to really unpack what it is that I also came with me. Because, being in that particular foreign space, being the writer that I am right now, to say like, okay, as a colored person, that means something different in that context. So now trying to explain what I mean when I say, okay, I'm a colored individual, because then colored is something here, colored is something, trying to get that to be understood. That was part of it, and then now them getting, or at least trying to get that context, and then diving into the prophet, where it was really dealing with that, with that whole issue of colored individuals, their issues, or not all of their issues, but at least some of their issues, and there was quite a lot of colored slang in it. So now it was really funny during the library reading of the play, seeing these American actors try to read colored slang. I tried my best not to laugh, but I couldn't help myself. Just hearing, how it sounds differently, how they were also, seeing the work quite differently from how the people who did it in January, the actors who did it in January, and then the actors who did it at Haifa, they all brought very different things, and then now seeing these individuals also bringing a whole new layer to it, and then answering some questions that I didn't even know or issues that were in the play that I hadn't realized. Because, and whether you are aware of it or not, your play is always, or your art is always saying a story, and you don't have control over what sort of story the next individual is seeing in your work. The only thing that you can do is to interact with that context, interact with those interpretations, so that at least you can get something out of it. So that was one of the things that I kind of had to navigate in by unpacking of my own context, to say like, okay, do I even understand my own context? I feel like I'm still trying to figure out what my context is now, because this is my first play that I decided to really dive into the idea of me as a colored individual, dealing with religion, race, sexuality, and all those things. Like, okay, that was my first time really bluntly dealing with that. So I'm still trying to process the things that are in there. Still, I haven't figured it out, all of it, but I think it's still a journey that I have to go through, and it's something that I feel as artists we shouldn't take it for granted, that whole idea of context. Like you mentioned earlier on, when we're in this space, it's easy for people to kind of get the context that you're coming from, because we kind of feel like, oh, we are homogeneous, even though we are not. But that's kind of the whole prevailing idea that, oh, we are all Shona, so we all get what this thing is trying to say.
Or I've got colored friends, so I understand the colored experience.
I understand the colored experience, but then that is not necessarily the case. So that's why I think it's important for you to allow your work to be interrogated, to kind of see like, okay, what exactly is the story trying to say, and so the whole having more dramaturgical work done before just chucking it onto the stage, so that at least some things can be avoided in terms of trying to deal with some things that come up. But I guess that's But the good thing is at least there wasn't anyone who found the play offensive thing, which was very different from this side. They were individuals from Zim who found the prophet quite offensive. So I was just like, okay, that's interesting, where you think that, oh, we're all on the same page on this, or we're all understanding the context that we're dealing with, and then you find like, oh, others are seeing something different, or you feel like you're doing something completely different from what it is that you think you are doing.
You talked about layers that people who don't necessarily understand your context bring to work. Can you give us an example of what sort of layers were put in the work that you were working on when you were in the writing in residence?
Well, for me, I guess one of the prevailing things that I also noticed, even in almost all of the plays that they selected for the OI Playwrights Conference, was that each play was in a way dealing with the issue of race. How individuals of different races, how you navigate certain spaces that you find yourself together. How do you navigate your politics, especially when it comes to the national issues that are going on around. You say, okay, me as a colored person, or me as a man, you as a woman, how do we deal with the politics of, let's say, Zim as a country? Because how I see it is different, how you see it is different. So now trying to sort of like unpack those things, like I mentioned earlier on, I had to first deal with the whole idea of what does it mean to, what does the word colored mean in South Africa? To sort of like get that out of the way, so that whenever I throw that whole word colored, so that at least they don't sort of like misunderstand what it is that I'm saying. So it was sort of fun to kind of see some of the parallels that are there, the spoken colors and the actual American colors, in terms of what they are going through, especially right now, and also what we colored individuals in general sort of like go through at a what can I say, in terms of our whole government level first, saying how the state sees us, how we deal with that, how I deal with the state, how I deal with the individual. So it was something that was at the back of my mind, and also something that I also had to deal with there, because I'm now in this foreign space where, by virtue of being a person of color, the whole mortality rate stuff gets into play, to say, okay, by just being a person of color in America, your life is, just know that, you're at risk. You just simply being there, you are at risk. So it was really interesting to deal with that, in terms of have that, unpack that with them, and also unpack in terms of some of the dangers that we kind of feel at times as a minority, this side. And for me, what I also found quite fun is the realization that no matter where I go in this world, I will always be a part of a minority. So that was, quite a big thing for me. I was like, damn, no matter where I go, apart from my own family, even in my own family, I'm not part of a minority in there, I will always be on the lesser side. I have to deal with politics of the majority and what that means to me as an individual, and what that means to my work. So those were some of the levels that I had to kind of deal with in those 2 weeks, unpack in those 2 weeks.
Okay, I think we'll just pause these questions, and then we'll let you read from something that you shared whilst we were in Ohio, and then we'll then open up to questions from the audience as well.
Okay, so in terms of the events that were going on, since I wasn't a featured playwright, I didn't have a public reading of my work. But in terms of their public events, I took part in their artist cabaret. So the artist cabaret was where all of the playwrights that were taking part in that conference has to present. You have to do a 5-minute presentation on the theme breaking light. So it could have been anything, whether reading from your own work or from someone else's work, or song, and dance. whatever, so it was kind of open to that. So during the artist cabaret, I made this presentation, and it was a speech or something or whatever. So I'm just going to read it out and then get to talk about it. I called it Let There Be Light. The past few days have been both amazing and devastating. Up here in Ojai, I've had a chance to learn and to grow surrounded by an amazing community of artists. Back home, things went up in flames. Some people lost their lives. The liberator pointed his gun at his people. How do I process it all? I don't have the answer. I thought I knew the what's next of my country. Now, I don't know anymore. For now, all I can do is continue wading through the darkness until I find breaking light. I know it's there somewhere. Or at least that's what I'm telling myself right now, because the alternative would be spiraling hopelessness. I was asked to comment on the current Zimbabwe 2018 situation. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say beyond let there be light. My country shall hold on to hope. Can I be any more cliche? Maybe, maybe not. But I'll hold on to the hope that in my lifetime, I shall experience a truly glorious Zimbabwe. Tonight, hopeful, I shall share with you a piece of my passion, a piece of my heart, a glimpse into my reality. I'm a colored person from the largely unknown neighborhood of Adbeni in Harare, Zimbabwe, Africa. Most of my adult life, I've found myself having to defend my coloredness or lack thereof in some cases. In Zimbabwe, and to a lesser extent Zambia, the term colored or goful is used to refer to people of mixed race. Most are descended from mixed African and British or African and Indian progenitors. From my birth certificate to my national ID card, even my passport, my gofulness is institutionalized at the highest level imaginable in my country. I cannot just get an ID. I can't just acquire a passport. I have to give an account of my lineage and other questions the individual processing my papers is entitled to ask me. I shall not go into the stereotyping that colored Zimbabweans go through, because apparently I already look like a stereotype. I'm just going to leave that hanging for now. Nevertheless, the past few years I have studied to show myself approved. I have put in the work, I've been pushing through the darkness, and now breaking light is nearly upon me. I deserve to succeed. My mother told me so before she died 17 years ago. My mother, the only queen of my heart, my mother. Without a doubt, I know I would not have made it this far had it not been for her courage, her strength, and her fierce love. Against all odds, my mother pushed and made it and gave me an education, made sure that I had all that I needed no matter what. She was a vegetable vendor during a time when it wasn't the in thing. I remember a time in primary school when some classmates laughed at me when they learned that this colored boy's mother was a vendor, a MC. And yet, come 2018, almost everyone in Zimbabwe has become a vendor. She didn't let it stop her. She did what she had to do, shamelessly working to make sure I have a better future. To every woman here, to every mother, daughter, sister, I celebrate you tonight. If no one has ever said it to you, allow me to say it. Thank you for being heaven's blessing. A light, a warrior, a giver of life. Thank you for being the awesome human being you are. I salute you. I salute my mother who sacrificed so much for me. I wish she were here physically to celebrate my success, encourage me through my failures. Therefore, tonight, I raise a glass to it all. not only for myself, but for every Goffo kid who has had to work extra in order to be vaguely considered good enough beyond the binaries and the boxes. May our light shine through the night, shine on, breaking light, tearing down the walls of prejudice, racism, sexism, drug abuse, violence, phobias, dropping out of school, unemployment, the false modesty of our country, and the hypocrisy of our nation. I will break down those barriers, or at least try to. I owe myself that much. Let there be light, child of the sun, breaking light.
Wow, that was quite a powerful speech. I'm still trying to process it. Whilst I'm processing it, I think we'll open up to people from the audience to ask Patrick questions about what we've just been talking about, or about the speech that you read, or about this idea of unpacking and selling the politics of your work in a place that is away from home. Professor.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Thank you so much. To me, that's intriguing, amazing. Your storytelling, your experiences in the years and your work, your creativity. But from what you were saying, it looks like, color and features very much. And it was like a driving force, your creativity. And I just wanted to know to what extent then you are just inspired by being color in your creativity. Do you explore any other areas, perhaps from the issue of being color?
Okay. Well, in terms, the issue of color is actually something that I started really focusing on this year during the Almasi African Players Conference, because it was a challenge that was thrown at me by the individuals who were there, because that was pretty much, the puppet is the only play of mine right now in which all of the characters are colored. So during the first readings of the play, the dramatists that were there, they were like, okay, fair and fine, this is an amazing piece, we enjoy it, and we get the idea that these characters are colored, but then by just simply reading that work, we don't actually, get a sense of their coloredness, or some of the stories that, maybe colored people sort of like go through here could be tried, because they were like, if we were to just remove the part where you see the list of characters, this could just be anyone, anywhere, everywhere. But now when you start now digging into your own experiences and start writing it, because they felt that, it's something that I sort of owe myself to do, since there's hardly, well, as far as I know, because I could be lying, as far as I know, there's not really that much work in terms of in theater that is where you can say, oh, this play, we actually have a colored character in this play, or a colored voice, whatever this colored voice is, in this play here. So it's something that for these past few months I've been trying to explore, trying to push to say, like, okay, as a colored individual, what stories can I actually talk about? Even though there's someone who argued against that in terms of me focusing on the colored stories, because part of the feedback from the first reading that we had after the Almasi Players Conference, there's some individuals who told me that I'm being racist in focusing on colored stories. But I was like, okay, how am I being racist in focusing on colored stories? Could you explain it to me, how exactly that is working? They felt that I'm being divisive, there shouldn't be a black story, there shouldn't be a white story, and there certainly shouldn't be a colored story. But I was like, okay, so where then do these stories fit? Because in as much as, yes, we are trying to be this rainbow nation, but we can't now just ignore that there are certain stories that are somewhat unique to certain individuals, in as much as we want to focus on the whole universe, the whole universality of things, humanity and all that. But then there's, for me, I was like, that actually even spurred me more to say like, okay, since someone is feeling that I'm racist, let me dive into this and do more of that, because there were certain individuals as well, like the colored folk that attended the reading in January. For them, they were like, that is the first time in all of their years of attending theater to actually watch a play that has people that look like them, that speak like them, that are talking about things that they deal with. So for me, there was confirmation that, okay, maybe it's something that I now need to start exploring, something that I need to start diving into, in as much as others who feel that I am being, I'm being racist or I'm being divisive, I'm trying to just, create tension where there's no tension, but that would be a lie. There is already tension amongst a whole lot of things, so that's why I'm trying to see how far can I push it, because it's also a struggle that I have had to deal with in my own life in terms of answering that question of how colored am I? Because I've been challenged by other individuals to say that you don't sound colored. So how can you be colored? Even when I was at this school, I remember there were certain individuals, whilst I was at UZ, who walked up to me to say, how can I be colored and be in university? Because coloreds are only mechanics, DJs, hairdressers. So I was like, oh wow. So it's like the only three things that we colored people can do. We can't we can't go to university and do, God forbid, the arts. So they were like, no, you're just a light-skinned black person who's trying to be special. So I've had to deal with some of those things. So those are stuff that I'm trying to now unpack in my stories, because I feel like I'm not the only one who's had to deal with that, where you're always having to question, your race, and I guess we're pretty much, some of those kids, and for me it's also, the more I think about it, the more it irks me as well, how it's so easy for individuals to refer to us by our race, in as much as the person might know my name, like, or just call me Iwam Karendu, and I'm like, hey, but if I'm to go Iwam Boy, there's a whole lot of drama in that, but people feel comfortable to just throw it, and I have to take it. Those are the things that I had to take growing up, the whole, accepting that, that is the norm, accepting the idea that I can't get an ID. If I'm to go to the registrar, I have to be interviewed by the registrar for me to get an ID. So if it's not there, I can't get an ID. If he says no, I can't get an ID. And some of the questions that they ask you in that interview are borderline offensive. Because the last time I went to go get an ID, one of the questions I was asked was, do I want to get married? And I was like, at this particular point in my life, no. And then the person went into a whole sermon of how I want to remain a child because I don't want to get married. So now you have to sit there and take all of that because you want your ID. So those are the things that I was like, those are kind of some of the things that I guess we also, people should kind of start now hearing about, because when I spoke about it, there's some individuals that are like, we had no idea that's how it is, because for them, they just simply go to the registrar, you get your ID, you get your passport. Nobody knows of a certain room at the old passport place is room 100. Anyone who's pretty much colored or non-black knows of room 100. Because before you even buy your passport forms, you are sent to room 100, where you fill out a form where you write your lineage, all your great-grandparents, where they came from, your grandparents, what it is that they did, your parents and all that. And I'm like, why do I have to feel this? I'm a citizen, I'm a Zimbabwean citizen, but I guess the virtue of having that 00 at the end of my ID kind of, I guess, now I feel like maybe to an extent, I'm a second-class citizen. Normal citizens shouldn't have to go through some of these things. So that's now some of the stuff that is now pushing me to kind of now dig into those uncomfortable, dark things about who I am as a colored person.
I've got a question. You talked about the similarities of people of color and their experiences in Zimbabwe as well as in America. What are the similarities and what are the parallels of that experience of being a person of color or a person who's deemed a minority?
Well, I guess the biggest thing, unfortunately, I think, Charlie will be able to back me up here. To say like, for some of us, colored individuals, let's say we're at an event, we're at a function, if something goes wrong, something goes missing, and the cops come through, the first persons to be asked where the thing is the colored individual. What went wrong? Who took it? It's just that I don't have anyone else to corroborate that, but you can go ask anybody, if you're at a function and something goes wrong, more often than not, it's like, oh, the colored people are here, hold on to things. Some stuff that we have to go through. They're now for Black Americans that are all the Black people are here, that kind of thing. And with all these shootings that are going on in the States and everything. And I remember one night at Ohio, when I was being driven home, the police decided to pull over the car that was taking me home. And for me, that was, for me, I almost had a panic attack, seeing those red and blue lights, shit is about to go down. So now the police pull over this car, and so now the police officer, instead of going to the driver's side to speak to the driver or whatever that is, they pulled them over. They decided to come to where I was sitting to speak to the driver, to really see like, okay, who exactly is this person, who's being driven by this white person, all this question, where are you people coming from, and all that. And I'm like, okay, you can already see we got all these tags saying, the Ohio Playwrights Conference, and right next to the police station in Ohio, there was a massive banner that covered the entire street, from one end of the street to the other, that was written, the Ohio Playwrights Conference, talking about what it is. But then the individual was like, they had no idea what this Playwrights Conference is, what it is that I'm doing there. And I was just like, okay, why all these questions, and why are you asking some of these things, to the driver who's over there, but you're asking him when you're standing right next to me, that kind of stuff. So I was just like, okay. I was like, okay. And the reason, and they didn't even really give much of a reason as to why he pulled him over. But we spent like 6 minutes of that whole thing there. So you can imagine at the back of your mind with all the stuff you see on CNN, how you can just simply, get shot. If you just do anything funny, just find it intimidating. So finding an excuse to just do stuff to you, so it's something that I've kind of also experienced besides of that, not at that level, that intense, but then the whole suspicion of, just simply potential injury,
Yes, ma'am.
Hi.
I've been agreeing that your speech at the conference and the work you put into your script is based on your experiences. Because I hear you mention examples like the one you just mentioned. It's pretty much the same situation for like person not gender white people. So I'm thinking, and the other one you mentioned about wanting to get an ID in any of to go through a process. It's pretty much the same process for someone who doesn't have a clear background or past or lineages. So can we say that your paper, your speech at the conference and the work you put into the paper is based on your experiences, your life?
Yeah, well, this particular speech, Let There Be Light, yes, I tried to sort of give a glimpse of my lived realities, my personal lived realities, because I can't now say that this is all that every colored individual, even there are certain things that we all face as coloreds in Zim, but then there's some stuff that a lot of things that I dealt in this particular presentation were simply based on my own lived reality. But then with the prophet, I didn't really focus more on my stuff. When we was on the full play, the prophet kind of dealt with a number of things in terms of, what they mean to me, in terms of the whole idea of religion, money, the whole prophetic movement and all that, what it means to me, but also what it means to me as a kind of individual, also kind of now. So in these colored characters in the whole context of, a charismatic prophetic church, where you have a colored prophet, as I'm yet to see a colored prophet. But who knows, they're out there somewhere in this country, preparing themselves to pop up. And it's something that I was kind of also, I tried my best to not throw shade, but then, I just kind of threw shade at it, and how wouldn't it be great to kind of see, a colored prophet out there, and then finding that colored prophet, having the ability to turn water to wine. Since already as colored individuals were known as alcoholics, find the colored prophet, being able to turn water to wine, he will make money. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. That is neither here nor there, when it comes to some of the things going on. But those are some of the stuff to say, okay, in terms of the other people that I know, what were their experiences, as colored individuals, exploring their sexuality, exploring their race, exploring their spirituality or lack of it. That kind of thing. So.
I also want to ask to say, you say from the other side, the script, the paper was well accepted, but back here, the issues of, I was there when you did the reading for the script. So there were issues of homosexuality, issues of those stuff, issues like you're saying, you can never find a colored problem. So what did you then do about those issues back here in Zimbabwe for you to be able to act out that play on stage and people accepting it the way you would have wanted them to accept it?
Well, for me, I guess that was, the whole, one of the other challenges that I dealt with during the Almasi African Players Conference, to really be clear about the race, what this race is, what it means to the characters, and also to be clear about, say in terms of the relationship between sexuality and religion. Because in the earlier drafts, it's something that I kind of circled around. It was implied, but it wasn't explicit. But I think it was about 3 days before the reading, the first Almasi, the reading in January, where I was just like, to hell with this. I really am going to be clear and just say it as it is.
My interactions with other playwrights, they say that at times you create a character who knows more than you. A character who is more complex, to the extent that even when you're writing, I don't know, you cannot even control. To the extent that even when some of the people asked why waiting for the document, he also said, whatever you think it is, then that is the interpretation. Does that also happen?
It actually really did happen with the prophet during the Almasi African Players Conference reading. Because in as much as I'd been through the whole writing process and the many rehearsals with these guys here, but then when they performed it, it was like listening to my own play for the first time. Certain things that I even had no idea were in the work, and later I was like, why is this thing affecting me the way it is affecting me, and yet I'm the one who wrote it and put it on that paper and put it on stage. Because I remember there's a certain scene in The Prophet where I even walked out of the theater because I couldn't handle what was on stage, the stuff that they were pushing on stage. And yet, I found it funny, when I left the space. Like, why am I leaving? Why am I being affected by this? I wrote this thing, but I hadn't realized what it is exactly that I'm actually writing. And then when I got there, because even at the end, I broke down. I broke down in tears at the end. I was just like, bloody hell, what the hell is this? So for me, it was the whole really as if something has happened, but then couldn't figure out what is this thing that has happened, why is it affecting me this way, why am I even, weeping in my own place if I'm hearing it for the first time and then I spent months like doing this thing.
There was a question here, and we'll come to you, Professor.
I participated in politics only over 2010. Then I entered the IFC in 2013. I've noticed that there's a trend where your setup is the family. What's with you and the family?
Well, for me, I guess it's a sort of like a default, the whole, when all things, when all else fails, let me dive into, because for me, my own family is complex in terms of how we are set up, dealing with the whole idea of, your other siblings, have got their own father, dealing with that, with those certain things, and, for me, I always find family dynamics fascinating, especially if there are secrets in there, because I always feel every family has got secrets, things that they hide not only from the world outside, but from amongst themselves as a family, and kind of trying to put these characters in a place where they are forced to deal with those things. Okay, is it going to break the family when this comes out, or is it going to bring them together? So yeah, it's a trend, I guess. If you want to call it that, to say like, okay, my works will involve families, will involve, some dark secret, and in some way or another, there will always be someone dealing with religion in there. Because for me, it's also something that I'm also dealing with my own in my own life. So I'm trying to deal with it through my characters. Like, okay, how do I deal with this idea of religion when I'm not at the point in my life where I'm like, do I even need to believe in these things that I was raised to believe in? Like, why should I, believe in this, that kind of thing. So for me, I'm trying to use those characters at times to sort of like ask those questions that at some point I wasn't brave enough to ask. Like, okay, is there really a God up there? And what sort of color is he? Because every representation of God that I'm given is white, male. So I'm like, okay, is that what God is? And why should I, as an African individual, who happens to not be white, why should I take that particular branding of spirituality? But then for some, for me to say it out loud to my Christian family, we'll have a prayer meeting, like, okay, what's going on with you? We need to lay hands, because there's something going on with you that you need to deal with. So I'm like, okay, throw it in my face, even though now I feel a bit bolder to kind of ask those questions that at first when I did On Your Hope, it was still very much down there. And then when I went into I Have Sinned, I sort of tried to push it up, because I remember someone telling me that I'm being anti-Christian when I have sinned. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then with the prophet, hey, it just went to a whole new place. So I can imagine what they explain. They explain. But I guess I'm gonna get kicked out of church after this one. So we'll see how this is gonna work.
Okay, so we'll come to Professor, then we'll come to the gentleman here at the front.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I think this one is probably a comment on the Christianism. I think as a comment, I think I should really commend you for that courage, focus on the courage. Because in my view, I think Zimbabwean hearts and even African hearts in general, my understanding, was not really focused very much on showing the experiences of the current people. And I think I've said the only part that's through courage together. And I think, if you continue to do that, then you begin to understand much more. The society focus much more on understanding the experiences of other people. So I think on that part, yes. Of course, there are also the question that you raised, that you are also getting the issue of identity as a color. Because some people ask you, who really is the color? yes, there are those issues we deal with, but at the end of the day, I think you are really focusing on something that is very interesting. But then probably the question that it would be, society's attitudes towards people may not really only in the negative sense. I think that the things to be embraced the colored people is part of us, particularly when we talk about blacks. I think I'm someone who really does not want the issues of color very much talked about. Because sometimes say to people, this person really black, what do you really mean? It's just really white, what do you really mean? So I have problems with those terms to an extent. But at the same time, we know there is a sense in which people relate with a certain group of people simply on the basis of the shade of their skin, that skin. So therefore, we call them this, and therefore they could be stereotype them and behave like you were saying, colored people, the language, the stuff, that kind of thing. I was at the hospital sometime and these theater nurses were saying to me, look, you are given, what they call anesthetic, kind of medication so that you with the operation. So they said if you drink alcohol, you are likely to wake up earlier before the operation is complete. So they said to me, what kind of people who experience they wake up during the operation. So those types of so that's some of the kind of attitude that in society but at the same time, I think my understanding of color is somewhere really excellent. I recall Carlos Marx, who was in the Soviet playing for the national team, Charlie John. Actually, I grew up when I was young, a child. I grew up interacting with a lot of colored people because we were used to, they lived in Michigan, this set of old Michigan, and we were living in Mambo. So we meet at a place we call Kafa, we play soccer and whatever. So, I was that type of experience with colored people. So there are also the positives that we celebrate. But at the same time, I think it's very important to look into some of these negative kind of attitudes towards people who are labeled color.
True. There is, a whole lot of positives, for being colored. Because at the end of the day, yes, we are damn good mechanics. You want to get your car fixed, send it to a colored individual that will know what to do with your car, but just not me. I will ruin your car. Yes, we are great teachers, we are great hairdressers. There's a lot of things that that are going well for us. It's not always all doing. When we come together and have our festivities, understand appropriate them like the
Okay, so ask the gentleman here to ask this question and the lady here. If there are no more questions, I think those will be, and the gentleman here and the gentleman here. I think those will be our last questions. I think the moment you say these are going to be our last questions, like, no, I need to ask my question now. So these will be our last questions for the evening.
Hi, Patrick.
Hi.
Apologies for being late. I'm going to regress a bit. I don't know if someone had asked you this question before. I've been reading the papers a lot, and I noticed that in your play there are two dominant things that seem to be prophetic, that seem to have happened. Number one, we had St. John's teacher's issue, which is basically sexuality. The level to which Zimbabweans were outraged in the comment and the divisiveness of the whole thing brings me back to your play, The Prophet. you mentioned there were queer characters in there. And the second one is something more recent, the cure for AIDS from the prophet. A prophet has come up with a cure for AIDS, okay, God forbid, but you get the picture. We have religion, another thing, which again is in your play. So explain to me, was this play supposed to be a social dialogue? Was it supposed to inspire some kind of dialogue towards the two issues that Zimbabweans always fight over the most, other than politics?
Yes and no. Yes and no. Yes, in terms of like, I was aware of some of the possible things that might come out of it in terms of how people are going to react to it, how they're going to feel, about, especially, when, especially during the whole scenes in my play that have nudity in them, that whole idea of, people. I guess for some people it's easier for them, I don't even know why. It's easier for them to view female nudity. They don't mind. But when it's now a man who is nude, all of a sudden it's an issue. But I'm like, hey, if you can accept, female nudity, what's the difference? When it's now a guy who's so those are some things that I was like, okay, let's talk about it if we can, but hopefully talking about it in a respectful way where we say, okay, I will respect your opinion. I might not necessarily believe in it, but I'll respect that it's your opinion as long as you respect my opinion as well, because what? It's mine. And this, at least trying to get, positive dialogue, not the whole, no, this is bad, or this is good, but then let's kind of figure out why is it bad, why is it good. And in terms of the no part, I don't think I am that deep as yet.
So it's a stroke of light.
I don't think I'm that deep as yet, because there are some things, like I said, when I then heard my own play being read out, for an audience, where I didn't realize that those things were in there, because they were now also eating me. It was now also speaking to me, because I don't know about other writers, because there are certain moments also where I also, get caught up in the spirit, and then I'm just pouring out what I'm pouring out, and once that spirit has moved, that's that, I totally forget, then when I'm reading, I'm like, oh shit, did I write this? What is going on when I wrote this? Because at times it happens to me. I don't know for other writers or performers, maybe it does happen to them. So that's why I'm saying some things that then made the play have impact did happen by accident. I didn't do them to say I'm sitting down to plan to say I wanted to have this impact, I wanted to have that impact. Because if I sit down and do that, I won't be able to write. I won't be able to do anything. Even though there are other writers who really sit down and plot out their work to say, I'm putting this because I want this reaction, I'm putting this because I want that reaction. For me, I put things in my play that feel right for me at that moment to say, okay, at the in my spirit, what is feeling right at that time. So if it was prophetic, who knows? Let me be that colored prophet. I could just make money. Who knows? What could happen? Because I think it would be quite an interesting thing. To see a colored prophet, or even in general, because in as much as, let me just digress here, because in as much as, we do have colored preachers in this country, but there's not a single one of them that truly, will stand up and tell you that I am a colored preacher, or, or who will really stand before you as a colored individual who happens to be a preacher. I don't know why, and I'm yet to really see, even the one that I've attended, the one that I've sat under in all of my years since it under his preaching, he has spoken about his coloredness here and there, but when it comes to issues that matter, you will never see him identifying as colored. You will never see him in the colored community, and you're like, colored preacher with this big church, and yet you are not found in the colored community. You do nothing for the colored community, so we can't call you a colored preacher.
Isn't it just an issue of demographics? Seriously speaking, if we're looking at the numbers, the demographics in the church, the majority of the congregants are actually black.
But that doesn't matter to me though, because for someone who for some time grew up in Braeside, Arcadia, now that you are famous, you have no idea where Braeside and Arcadia is.
It's just...
You see where I'm coming from.
It's your market, my friend.
There's
I'd like to comment your article was the big topic. To say I do not care about whoever else is going to come and say about the way I'm working or I've structured this thing. Because you find in any activism issue, there's always going to be that side, even in feminist activism. You find, if you're trying to tell people, what are Zimbabwe? There are women who are saying, it's not just Zimbabwe. Or we are well off, we are rich, or whatever. Even if you go to the United Arab Emirates, you tell them, you guys are being oppressed. They tell you, we're not being oppressed. We're creative this way. So, in any activism issue, there's going to be those people, those other people who are going to say, we're better off than black people. And we are not suffering. We've got everything in control. So, it's a really good point of view that we're trying to bring out. Yeah, you're trying to show the other side of the color people, because us, the people, we also see them somehow as superior to us, these color people. And yes, that's no more people like us. Then my question, and that's the right, my question is in line with Dr. Chikon's question. To say, you mentioned the issue of you bringing yourself out of the routine. So, has it not affected your audience? And if so, how? Because you find, you mentioned that you're already a minority. The colored community is already a minority. So you're coming out to people and telling them, I'm colored, this is happening to me. People will be like, so what, this and that. So how has it affected the audience? What are the responses you got from your audience?
Well, with the idea of victimhood, it all depends on how you play it. You know, how you play the victim, how you present the idea of being a victim. Because for me, in terms of how I also dealt with the different places that the prophet has been read, I've presented a different facet in terms of the victimhood that I'm playing. Because also these people trained me also how to play around with people's emotions. So those are some of the things to say, okay, if I want people to buy into this idea of, oh, I'm a victim, how am I going to, present that victim? So when I was in the States, it wasn't just like, oh, I'm a victim, but I'm a victim. I am stepping out of my victimhood. This prophet is my own way of stepping out, But in January, the way that I played the victimhood, I was like, can you not see that I am a victim? Even though, yes, I'm still playing the victim, but it's all about how are you going to set it? Because, at the end of the day, also as an artist, you need to sell your work. So you're going to have to play around with some of these things, and some of them might be half-truths, to be honest, in terms of just how bad it was for me, because it wasn't all that bad. Like I said, in as much as my mother really struggled to get me to where I'm at, but it wasn't as bad as other individuals, because I actually did manage to go to university for crying out loud, and others haven't. So it's all about, okay, then, because that whole question of like, oh, how much of a victim are you when you got a degree behind you, when you're this articulate about your things, so you just have to figure out how best to do it. So now I need to move away, I guess, from the whole victim item that I played that card. Now let's get into the rebel who's now pulling down the strong ones. Let's see how am I going to shake, how am I going to rattle these chains that are holding me to break. So we'll see how that goes, because it's still a journey that I'm trying to do. I'm trying to go through. So
Yes, there's another say and then.
As for me, I grew up in the ghetto of Zimbabwe. It's near from my brain. We used to get up there. We meet colored people, and colored people say, you're black, we colored, and you're being chased away. So, I guess those black people, they used to have that mindset that colored people always want to be alone. And colored people always want to be colored. Because if you, right now, if you get a colored girl from G-side, and you tell your mother, and your mother always says, those are good smokers, and those are bad people. It seems like, as we are this generation, I think it's better for us to start to engage a lot of things that we do as either you're black, either you're colored, either you're white, so that people really understand. Because back in the days, people used to say black is black, white is white, color is color. So if we put more theater pieces and as theater more and films start to engage, because I've seen some of the American plays and some of the American movies, they're trying to educate about the colored people. Because I heard this other statement where they say there's no black, black African American. Black is black, Africa is African. So my question is, as you're colored, we have two races, right? So let's say your father's black, let's say your mother's black, but your father's black. And do you take yourself as we take ourselves? Because if you see a colored person, he runs away to say, no, I'm from Africa, but my origin is not from Africa.
Well, that there in terms of how I see myself, because it depends in terms of, because when it comes to colonies, we have the first generation and then the second, third going there. So now, for some, because it's a very contextual question to say about, hence the whole how colored are you? Because there's some to say, okay, the father is white, the mother is black, and then the offspring. How is, what is that? Some will be like, what color? But then there's some, in terms of like certain individuals in my family to say like, for generations going back, both parents were colored. So where you can't even say like, at what point in the family tree did this thing eventually happen? Because it's kind of really hard to trace, in terms of how far back can we go to sort of like figure out in terms of like the origins of coloredness, if there is. But then in terms of Zim, I have found individuals that say that, you can't be really considered, local native because there's a starting point of what your lineage, which is for some, colonialism, to say that then, that's where that. I don't know how far true that is because I wasn't there and I'm not much of a historian to say, okay, how far back can we go? Because a lot of stuff has been passed along the way and I'm just here. I just have to deal with it in terms of how do I want to see myself, how do I want to present myself, because I cannot deny all the whole mixtures of the other things that are going on in terms of the heritage that I have. That's why I'm also at a loss right now with this whole wave of decolonization. Decolonize your mind, decolonize this. And I'm like, how can I decolonize myself when allegedly my entire heritage is rooted in colonialism? Where do I fit in this, in this, in this, in this thing here? So we kind of there. Maybe I think that's a dialogue that some of us colored individuals need to start getting into instead of just blocking it. I do agree that yes, there's more work that needs to be done, more theatre pieces that need to be done. And to tell you the truth, some of the stereotypes, we do own them, They didn't just come from nowhere. Yes, there is a significantly high number of people who are affected by alcoholism in the community, individuals who are dealing with a whole lot of things, but then that's the same with any other race. But then I guess the only difference would be it being branded to say, this is a colored thing. And also, yes, I do agree with you, that whole idea of trying to separate ourselves. But for me, I couldn't really separate myself from everything because, my mom was black, she was short, so hey, we're all in there, in that whole mixed thing, And even my family, when we come together, in terms of the colored side of the family, we don't even speak English when we're together. We'll be speaking in short. But if you were to enter my house, that is what will be spoken. But the moment we leave the gate, we are back to twanging. We are back to twanging, but that's just who we are. That's just who we are.
There's a question.
Thank you. Mine, I don't know if it's a question or comment or not. But you spoke about you moving out of the theater during one of the performances because of the situation which was going on. That wouldn't it be better to say to have a white and a black and a color? Because what whites do to us, sometimes what we do to colors, right? So it's more of a rotation so I don't know if it was going maybe to make you feel better to say you see what a white person is doing to a black person, you see what a black person is doing to a colored, right? And you could maybe the message you are telling it from a colored perspective, right? But the message now is you are focusing on what we do to each other as people. Because for me, I feel like the white, they are not being fair to us, right? And then also I'm not being fair to the colors because I don't like them. Maybe it's because they are close to the white or what. But it's a rotation, right? It's a rotation to say if it was, it would make you feel better to have all the races there and they are doing what they are doing to each other. It's not only the colors, because we also face that as black people, right? We also, to say if a white person walks in a room and there's a black person, say that's a criminal. You see, they do that to us and they also do that to you. So wouldn't it be better if it was like that?
It would be interesting to see. It would be interesting to explore. I don't know how best it would work out, but for me, I don't know. Maybe at some point I'll be able to do just that and do justice to it, because at least with the colored stories, I didn't have to really stretch too far in terms of the lived experiences, in terms of the mindset, because I'm already there. You know, I kind of already know. But I guess now as a writer, it would be now the challenge to say, okay, how does a white person, how do they view the rest of us? Because but as I am right now, I'm still trying to deal with the bullshit that we colored people do to each other, because as I said, there's some stuff that happens in our community that's got nothing to do with anybody else besides us simply not taking responsibility of our own shit and dealing with it. So I guess I'm at that point where I'm trying to have that mirror to say, okay guys, let's stop blaming everybody else in some certain instances. Let's kind of bring it back home to say, we are the ones that are allowing our children to drop out of school. We are the ones allowing our children to start doing certain things. That's why I say I was a bit privileged, because to an extent I'm glad that my mother was in color, because there was no way in hell in our house where you would drop out of school, because that was a whole no-go area. No matter how hard school becomes, she was like, you're not dropping out of school. I didn't spend all these years uneducated. So she was like, I don't want you to go through that, where you now have to be now put in this box of like, okay, these are, the uneducated ones and everything. Because it's so funny how accent somehow, is supposed to relate to your levels of education or how trustworthy are you. So that's why I end up in some way that I sound, because I grew up with the whole idea of, I can't sound ghetto, I can't sound uneducated, I didn't go to university for me to then be, hey bruh, how you that kind of thing, to have these things coming out of my mouth. But it would be an interesting thing to see where we have a white character, a black character, a colored character, because I feel like, there's some who've done well with the whole white and black character, but the colored link is missing. But I don't know if I'll be able to do it as yet right now, but who knows, later on, or you can do it. It'll be interesting to see how you will be able to write it, and then show us colored people, and then also call you out like, no, that is a lie. But let's try that and see how that will work.
All right. To wrap up our talk, what advice would you give to an aspiring playwright in terms of the process of creating compelling work that can be taken anywhere within the world, as well as any other nuggets that you can actually share with aspiring playwrights or playwrights who are already working?
Well, for me, one of the things would be know why you're writing. Really know why you want to be a playwright. Because if you're unable to answer that question, then don't do it. because the stronger the why, the easier the how. So if your why is not strong, then you might as well dive into other things, because writing is a lot of work. And most of the times you don't even get appreciated for that work, because the one who really gets seen is the actor and the director, the writer you talk about. You know, once you've written your work, that's that. Hardly anyone remembers it, unless it's really that compelling. So if you're trying to be famous and whatnot, that might not be the right route to take. But if you feel like, you know, you do have stories that you have got to tell, and you're the only one who can tell them, then tell those stories, write those stories. But I guess also in terms of one of the things, for those that are already writing, I had actually 3 things would be, you know, craft, content, and context. And those 3 things you've got to really have it on lockdown. It's not enough to just be imaginative. It's not enough to be talented, because we are all talented. But if your talent is not, you know, matched with craft, if you're not working towards your craft, perfecting that craft, then yeah, you know, you're just, you know, potential. And like, now at that point where, you know, don't fall in love with potential. This potential is just that. It means nothing unless if you actually do something with it. You know, so work on your craft, you know, because you are writing something, you're communicating something, so you need to understand how best to do it, how to put it in there, and then the content. What stories are you telling? Like I said, no matter what you write, it is saying something, and there are times that you might not even be aware of what your story is saying, and if you're not really paying attention to your content, you might just find yourself in trouble. You are able to take yourself out of it. That's why they say, you know why you're writing. Because at least for me, in terms of the stuff that I'm dealing with now, I can stand for myself. You know, even when I was, you know, called out as a racist, you know, as a heretic, I stood my ground. I was like, yeah, you know, let's have that dialogue. But then, if you don't have conviction in your content, conviction in your story, then you will crumble and fall, because not everyone is going to like this stuff. Because there's always people who are not going to like it, you know, because I met someone there in the States who was like, this is a whole lot of nonsense, I don't understand it, I don't get it, and then they just built up that wall to say like, you know, I don't understand it, I don't get it. But for me, because I had conviction in my work, I was like, you know, fuck it, that's your opinion, good for you. You know, that was that. You know, that was that for me. And then context, you know, really, you know, don't take context for granted, because we write our work, we create our work within context. You know, we produce our work within context. Our stuff is interpreted within context. So you've got to be aware of the issues of context. Your own context, understand it. The context of the place that you are in, understand it. You know, understand the context of, you know, the places where you want to take it to, so that you are able to then be open to interact with how people are now viewing your work. Because everybody's going to view your work based on their situation, based on their context. So if you're also blind to that, you might then also find yourself in another hot mess where people are asking you, what is the context? And you're like, I don't know. You can't much know. So.
All right, okay, great. Thank you so much, Patrick, for taking time to share your experience and to share your work with us. And thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for taking time out of your Wednesday evening to be with us tonight. On the seats, there are some slips, feedback sheets. Would like to hear from you in terms of feedback on the event, but we would also like to keep in touch with you in case we do not have your contact details in our mailing list. So please do take time to fill in those feedback sheets and present them to our stage manager, Prudence, who's sitting here once you're done with that. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.